Hello everyone and welcome to Diamonds of Craft, where I make things. My name is Sarah and happy spooky season. One of these days I would very much like to have a spooky doll project that spans the whole of October, but that requires some foresight on my part and I don't have that ability yet. Anyway, I am back this time with another collab, one that I've been excited about since about May this year. As you probably know from the thumbnail, I made Stolas, so without any more dawdling, I will show you how I made him. For this project, I decided to use something many doll collectors may actually be happier about, and used a knockoff Monster High doll from AliExpress. I will get into the details of why this was a terrible choice later, but by the time I get there, you may have already figured it out. I will start, as usual, by removing the hair, and I already removed the face. As you can see, it's left a little bit of a stain. Another thing to note with these fake dolls is that the rooted hair is also very sparse. So if you do wish to use one and replug hair into it, you may have to add some holes. There is no real neck peg with these dolls either, and on one hand it's handy to just pull the head off with no consequences. The bad thing about this is there isn't a range of motion beyond side-to-side head movements. Anyway, I'm clearing the head of the rest of the hair, and then I need to make marks on where to cut this doll. I don't need her face, so that comes off too. Stolas has a very distinct figure. He is extremely long and thin, and I want to reflect that with this doll, so I need to elongate the torso, arms, legs and neck. At this point, I realize if I am to keep him in proper proportion, I will need to cut above the joints too. Sadly, I made a mistake right here, but we'll get into that later. I am going to add armature to the new elongated bits with this wire. I did need to figure out just how I was going to attach the new wire down the middle, and I do not recommend what I ended up doing, which was heating a pin and sticking it through the body. It worked, but it was dangerous, and yeah, please don't do that. However, I did manage to hook the wire on and hot glue it in place, hexagon style. I did manage to drill a little into the arms to insert the wires. The mistake I made earlier was that I cut above the joints too close. So I could see where the top of the pin for the arms and legs were, and I couldn't drill holes into them. Once I was happy with the length of the new limbs, I added MILLIPUT straight onto the thinner ones. For the torso, I added some foil to bulk it out and keep it light, and used a lot of hot glue to keep it all in place and add a little more bulk that I could sculpt. Then the MILLIPUT can go straight on top. The chest of this doll was no issue, as the shape of Stolas's chest is a little more puffed out, so I just added material onto it to even it out. The toes also needed to come off, as Stolas is an owl and has no toes. Another thing to note about this plastic on the fake dolls is that when I was sawing the limbs, the friction was warm enough to almost fuse it back together. So that was fun to find out. I added more MILLIPUT and sort of gave him baby toes, but they're more of a placeholder. In an effort to keep all the limbs in place, I knew just having MILLIPUT wouldn't do it, so I put a layer of UV resin over the top. It smoothed it and held for quite a while, but ultimately almost every joint failed. It could be a grand combination of my poor planning and this material, but there is something about the way this plastic just doesn't act the same as the others. Super glue worked amazingly, but anything else was almost a waste of time. The neck broke more than once, especially when I was sculpting his face. For his face, I did essentially draw the basic outline of what I wanted him to look like with a toothpick on the uncured MILLIPUT. And produced this nightmare fuel. His chin was still a bit too square, and we all know from experience with Kaya that I needed to really take some extra measures. So once it was dry, I took a razor to the jaw and carefully as I could cut away. I still managed to cut myself, so that's another thing I don't recommend. Then it was time to add his face. Using the outline, I rolled out some snakes of clay and added the depth. After a while off camera, I ended up with this. I added some eyes to the top of his head because I had no idea how to add those in amongst his hair. This was the best solution I could come up with. Then I just paint those red, and I did cover them with UV resin so they stayed shiny. His face is super simple aside from the sculpting, red eyes, white face and black outlines really. I also paint his head dark blue and his jaw and body grey in preparation for yarn later. I did add some off-cam and decided I really wanted to see what his face would look like with the detail, so I did that first. And he is so simple, this was really the hardest face I've had to make. With others, imperfections make it interesting and more lively. With this, it is very, very easy to see the imperfections, and they are far more noticeable when the face is so simple. So I really took my time with all of the lines. Sometimes I had to redo them or straighten them with more white paint. I add the black around the eyes, which took forever. Again, these bits were off by the slightest amount, and I can really see it on such a simple design. Thankfully, it's easy enough to erase and try again. Then I decided to add UV resin to his eyes. I paint over it later for the pictures, as trying to photograph that would be a pain. Then I can finally move on to his hair. I needed to add the hair around his face pointing downward, so when I pull it back you can't see any glue, and I do the same around the eyes. Using any reference I could find, I move on to styling whilst adding more hair at the same time. I think I went about this in the most difficult way that I could. However, this hairstyle is hard. When it is 2D to 3D, it can be difficult to figure out what is happening. Obviously, his hair is slicked back, but where? Is it off to one side? Is it like a quiff from the 50s? There were lots of comments on Alistair's video telling me how wrong I got his hair. I disagree, but I'm not going to get into that in this video. All I'll say is I spent a long time looking at how it moves and came to my own logical conclusion. I did the same here. I watched the date night episode so many times for a reference for his hair and clothes. I think I can recite it word for word in my sleep now. I wanted to show more of the hairstyling process though, because I never managed to get any of it on camera, but it involves a lot of hairspray and a lot of patience. A lot. Stolas's hands also need the elongation treatment, so I cut those thingies off and added some wire. Once again, using the heated method, which is not recommended. I can then cut the fingers down to size and start sculpting on them. I do this by adding the MILLIPUT on every other finger, and once it's cured, I can then do the other fingers. Again, I had trouble getting the MILLIPUT to really stick, and I haven't had that trouble before really, so I'm thinking this doll material is just bad news. I made it work though, and I can paint those new hands black. Back to his legs now, and yes, they did fall off. Probably for the best, because there was no way I was getting pants over those hefty things. I wanted these to be heavier in the bottom for balance. Turns out I didn't do the best job at that, but he does stand up. He's just kind of drunk looking. I added more wire and more of a base structure and just piled on the MILLIPUT. After a lot of sanding and super gluing later, I can paint those too. I set his legs aside for after I make his clothes. I did use a normal top pattern and just kept pulling at it until it fit to the new contours of his body. I end up with this, and now I can add ruffles to it because we are making his date night attire. And then I add some rhinestones to the front, some silver thread between them, and there we have it. I made him a collar. I will have to add on last as this is an open back. I am sewing him into it, but the collar has to go last. His cape was something I was excited to make. It's all glittery on the inside like a red galaxy or something, so I can reuse this shiny red fabric I used with the Ringmaster last year. I pin it good sides in, sew it together, and turn it back out through the hole in the top. I did have to top stitch this down because the velvety fabric was too bouncy. I added some white ribbon on the inside, and when I looked, it did just seem like this was on the inside, but I'm not 100% sure. Either way, that's what I've done. I've just used hemming tape to fix that in place. I missed out showing the pants I made, but they're just like all the other pants, only slightly shorter. The last thing he needs is a tail. I made this out of foam and I wanted to cover it in yarn, but I didn't think it looked particularly good, and with the cape in the way and everything, it was just a lot of effort I didn't need to go to. So I just made a new one, painted it and glued it to his back. When it was in place, I can finish sewing him into his shirt. I added his collar, and at this moment decided he needed some eyebrows and eyelid shadows. So I covered his eyes and hair with masking tape as to not get the MSC on them, and I added all of that in. Yay for last minute face-up things! I think it was worth it though. Now I am sewing the cape onto his back, adding last minute rhinestones, and I can call him finished. I didn't film this, but I did it very last minute, in my defense. I needed a stand for him, and a few others have used the symbols for their respective demons as bases, so I did the same. With the cover from his grimoire, I cut it out with my Cricut and stuck it to the base. Speaking of grimoire, I almost let this project go by without making him one. It is very basic, but it will do the trick. Now he's complete. And here he is, all finished. I had Stolas on my list of things to make after I made Alistair in May, and I jumped at the chance to make Stolas in a collab. He may be a little wonky, but all in all, he's turned out really good. I really like him. I especially like his face. Let me know what you thought about him in the comments down below. Remember not to be a dick. Remember that. Like this video if you want to, subscribe if you also kind of want to, and if you do those things, then ring my bell. Check out everybody else's creations. I'll leave a link to all of their handles down below. There will be a playlist of the people who made videos, and there will be lots of pictures on Instagram. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye! He needs his book, his grimoire.